Hello, everyone. This is John Cavanaugh. This is creating accessible Canvas pages, and we'll just wait a few more minutes, I guess. Well, I'll just kind of chat away, and then we'll let people in as they come. Um, if you have questions, though, about creating your own course in an accessible manner, or you've already created your course and you want some advice about something in particular, please feel free to just ask. This is kind of an open forum, I suppose. And I also see a lot of familiar faces, and I always find that to be great. I've mentioned this before, but even for me, learning about accessibility, especially for Canvas and creating documents, it took a while to sink in. It took a couple times for me to just see the same type of presentation, to give it a try, and then have questions or get those questions answered. So I do appreciate people coming back just to review this course again. So please, Canvas editing never ends. I totally agree. Um, it just uh, it just keeps on going and going and going and lasts forever. So I do not mean to add on more work with this course. That actually one way of thinking about this is to save you some time. Um, I do know that going back over a course and trying to add in the accessibility afterwards can be a lot more time consuming than just doing it as you're working on it. So to keep in mind a lot of these techniques and a lot of these issues, I think as you're creating your course would be very helpful for you. So you don't have to kind of retrofit your course afterwards. Oop, let me let some people in. But I do appreciate that comment. Editing seems so like it goes on forever. And it takes a lot of time. So I know we put a lot of care and work into our courses, and it does show, by the way. One of my jobs in disability support programs and services is to work with students one-to-one. And these are students who they're not familiar with Canvas. Maybe they're part of the disabilities, they kind of get overwhelmed. So I'm helping them go over their class together. And sometimes I'm noticing some things that, oh, if this was just a little bit different in your course, I don't say this to the student, but I just kind of thinking in the back of my mind, if this was just a little bit different in how it was set up, it'd be a lot easier for this student. And this is students who are blind, who have ADHD, who have learning disabilities, could be all types of disabilities and types of students I'm working with. But all of these techniques that I'll be going over will help with that. All right, let me keep letting people in. And what I'm going to do right now is put into the chat a Word file, and I hope this works. I'm sharing a link to the file. If some of you could click on that and try to download it, or at least view it, and let me know if that works or not, that would be helpful. Otherwise, I'll put the actual file in the chat. Okay, thank you, good
It
luck.
works.
Thank you, and thank you. I appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions or comments, just say them. I appreciate that, and I think everyone appreciates questions. There's some big things about accessibility can be very intimidating, and I feel like we want to get over that as much as we can just by sharing your own experiences or you're sharing your own questions. So I'm going to share my screen, and this works. Share. All right. So what I did was I created this presentation inside Canvas. And the idea is that the information is here, but as well as I can make any changes, just like you would if you were editing your own class. And I'll be demonstrating what it sounds like to have a screen reader working. In fact, I think I have it running right now.
Speech mode beeps. Speech mode talk.
And I'll just press H for heading.
Selection removed.
Oops, I'm in the wrong window.
At 001 Jcava no dev heading level 1.
So it's at heading level 1. It's reading the title of this page. And always the title of a page is the heading, is a heading level 1. The headings that we add into our courses, into our pages, are always heading 2. So it's always heading one is the title, and then heading two, heading two, heading two, whatever headings you add in will be heading two. And we'll go over headings in a second. What I wanted to go over just right now is if I move down one,
Visited link edit button settings.
oops.
List with 5 items bullet. This training reviews common accessibility issues in a Canvas page and goes over the ways to edit them.
So when I moved down, it told me that there were 5 items or 5 bullets on this page, and then it started reading the first bullet. So it's very helpful to have this list set up so that a student using assistive technology like this, they can hear how many bullets they're going to be anticipating to have to read through so they don't miss anything. I'm going to turn off the screen reader for right now. This screen reader, by the way, is called NVDA, which stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access, and it's a free screen reader software program that students can download and use right away.
Speech mode off.
So here's my information, and then there is a link here for downloading the Word version, which I put into the chat. Let me know if you need another copy of that. And then I'm just going to keep moving on with our training because we only have until 1. So I want to get into as much as we can. All right, so checking accessibility is, like I said before, is very time consuming when you're doing it retroactively because you have to look at every page, page by page. And so when I'm doing a review of a course, I'm looking at every page because there's can be issues on every page and we don't want to miss them. There are different types or different methods of checking accessibility, and you can use the same one or different ones or all of them together if you want. One way of checking your course is using the OEI rubric, and there's a link here to this set of guidelines. Or if you look up uh, this OEI rubric online, you'll find this downloadable rubric. It's basically a spreadsheet that will uh, go point by point through your course about what it's looking for. And so when you submit your course for a POCR review, which stands for Peer Online Course Review, and we have a team, or actually a couple teams here at Delta College, there are 3 reviewers. 2 reviewers look at sections A, B, and C, and then another reviewer will look at section D, which looks at accessibility. So sections A is looking at the material and how it's presented to the student, and then section B is looking at instructor to student and student to student interaction mainly. And then section C is how is the instruction assessed? What are the assessment points? What are the assessment methods? And then in section D, is just about accessibility for the whole course. And there are 16 elements that I have to look at when I'm looking at your course. So that can be a little intimidating. And not all of these, I would say, are the most everyday type of issues. And sometimes I'm not usually focusing on those things. And sometimes they're like spreadsheets. You know, I have to look if you have spreadsheets in your course. I will look at the accessibility of those spreadsheets, but if you don't have spreadsheets, then you have to worry about that whole section. Same with PowerPoints. If you don't have PowerPoints, or at least you don't have PowerPoints that students interact with, then I don't look at that section. So what are the main points? Well, those are put into this list that I created. It's called List CCC, and CCC doesn't stand for California Community Colleges, although it could, I suppose. In this case, List CCC stands for links, images, structure, tables, color, checkers, and captions. Those are all the areas that I want you to look at when you're looking at your course and looking at the accessibility of your course. So again, this List CCC doesn't cover all the aspects in the OEI rubric, but I will be making note of the OEI rubric through this training, just so you understand that there is a correlation there. There are different accessibility checkers that were available to us when we're creating our course. There's the accessibility checker that's built into Canvas, as well as one that we added on called Pope Tech Accessibility Guide, and I'll probably be using that mostly through this training. And there are also checkers that are built into Microsoft Word as well as Adobe Acrobat. With I would say variable type of success using. Sometimes it could be a little confusing using accessibility checkers. Although the one in Microsoft Word, it could be really, really nice. It's very thorough in trying to explain to you why something is an issue. All right. I just already mentioned that I'll be using a screen reader called Non-Visual Desktop Access, but there are others called JAWS and Narrator, which is built into Windows, and VoiceOver, which is built into Mac computers. You do not need to know screen reader software programs when you're making your course accessible. But it does help to use one of these programs just to kind of get a better understanding about why you're making these changes and why it's helpful. So if you ever need me to look at a page or maybe even a section of your course, I could do that. Just contact me and I will just give me, access to your course, and I will use the accessibility checkers as well as JAWS or NVDA to look at the accessibility of your course, and I could do that. All right. Oh, and if you ever wanted to have a copy of this course, I think that's in that handout. You can go to the Commons, the Canvas Commons, and you can download this. It looks just like this. It's just a module, and it'll be just added into whatever course that you want, and you can run through it yourself. So let's just go into the list. So the L in list stands for links. So when we're adding links to your course, you want to make sure that they are readable. And what I mean by readable is that it looks like it's using kind of normal English. Don't put in the HTTP colon forward slash if you don't have to. And the reason I'm saying that is because when a screen reader user is listening to that, that's what they hear. They hear the HTTP colon forward slash, the whole thing. And sometimes it tries to pronounce the whole link as just one big word. It's very distracting. Usually what people do when they hear that, they just skip over it. And so you don't want them to skip over your links because there are links there for a purpose, right? It's supposed to take students to something else that helps them understand better about the text. So you want them to be able to hear that there's a link, but then just keep on moving with the rest of the surrounding text. We also don't want to say uh, link as the name of the link, or website as the name of the website, or click this, or word, or anything like that. You want to use descriptive text when you're describing this. One of the things that I say is, if this link was the only thing on the page, would it make sense all by itself? What students with disabilities can do is they can open up a links list. Well, they can do that right now. This is not good, right? When you just start experimenting live. So I just pushed the keystroke to open up the links list, and this is what it looks like. It's showing all of the links that are on this page, and you could see that there are a lot here that just are referring to Canvas, like the inbox, the Commons, the calendar, Studio, Pages. It's whatever you have listed in the home links for students. But let's say there's a student who read your page and they're trying to get to a certain link that you had mentioned in that page, but it's a lot of information. They can find it a lot more easily if they know or remember the name of the link. And if they just called it website or link, it might be a lot more difficult to go through this list to try to find that one link called link. So let me move down here. So these are some examples of inaccessible links. So if I wanted to make this accessible, I'll go to Edit. And this first link is just too long. It's just someone went to the web page and they copied the address bar and they pasted it into their course. Um, so what we could do is we can click it and click Link Options and then use another name. This is the OEI rubric. So instead of this long name for the text, I would just type in OEI rubric. By the way, those boops and beeps are from the reading software. The NVDA is indicating that it's still there. Hello, I'm still here. And it's just beeping at me. This next one is a little too vague. It's called to learn more, go to web page. So what is that web page? Well, actually, it's the Wikipedia page on accessibility. So I'm just going to copy that actually, and just one shortcut is just to select the link and then type the name in for that link. But in this case, it accidentally wiped out what I just had there. Oops, I have some more people coming in. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to undo that. That was a mistake. I'm just going to go back to click the link, click link options, and then replace web page with the name of the text. And what I've been doing lately is I don't do this for all the time when I'm naming links, but lately I have been putting the name of the web page as well as the name of the page. So what I mean by that is if you click on Wikipedia accessibility, it takes you to Wikipedia, and then this entry in Wikipedia is called accessibility. So it kind of gives more information about where the student is going and what page they should be finding themselves on. I hope that makes sense, but I don't always do that. Sometimes you could just write down accessibility if you want, or just the name of the page. So what does that sound like?
Speech mode talk. One issue, the link in this sentence is too long. Click here to view the link OEI rubric.
So it just said, click here to view the link OEI rubric, and it said dot instead of period. So let's move down to the next one.
2 issue, the link in this sentence. To learn more, go to visited link Wikipedia, accessibility.
Okay. So instead of saying web page, it says go to Wikipedia accessibility. Let me know if you have any questions about this. I'm going to
L
move.
button unavailable.
Oops.
Say, speech mode off.
All right. I think I have just a little bit more information about links. Ah, some links you can just leave them the way they're written. Like for instance, Amazon or MSN, because we know them by that name, Amazon.com. But I just remember just make sure to remember to remove the HTTP:// part. And then if you have your email address, put that in written all the way out. Don't rename this link as a professor's email or my email. It's better to write it all the way out so that the student could hear what your email and how it's spelled. I just have a small note here from Pope Tech. Sometimes you'll find empty links and you can just delete those. What I've noticed is if you're copying and pasting information from, let's say, from Microsoft Word and putting it into your document and there are links, sometimes when you move things around, there will be these empty links. And if you can just delete them. Pope Tech can help you with that and get rid of those. Any questions about links? We're going to move on through our list. So L is for links, and then I in list is for images. Like I mentioned before, in the OEI rubric, this is talked about in section D7. So we're kind of skipping ahead through the OEI rubric. And the reason, by the way, we do this is just I feel like it's a little bit easier to kind of understand accessibility if you just kind of go in through it this order. Um, Changing the names of links is a little bit easier to understand. Adding alt text, which is this next one, is a little bit easier to understand than maybe more the later ones. So that's why we do it in this order. Oh, all right. So we're on images. So alternative text or alt text is a word or a phrase that lets the student know what an image is. When the assistive technology or the screen reader gets to that image, it will say graphic and then read that alternative text. Because graphic is already in that it's already indicated. You don't need to say this is a picture of or a photo of or an image of something, something, something in your alternative text. You can just start saying the alternative text. In fact, you don't have to have, um, it doesn't have to have perfect grammar. It can just be a short phrase about what this thing is. You do have to have good spelling, though. I do recommend you have good spelling because the student will hear whatever it is that you put in the alternative text, they will hear that written out. I also say here, you don't have to have a top to bottom description of that image. It just has to be, or just has to answer the question, what is this? What is this thing that's here? If the image is described in the surrounding text, or if the image is decorative, it's just sort of going along with the theme of what you're trying to talk about, but it's not really pertinent information or critical information for understanding what is being taught, you can just mark that image as decorative. And it's in the same box in the same area as where you add the alternative text. I wish Canvas just made every image decorative as a default. And then you could always come back and add in the alternative text if you really wanted the student to understand what that image was. But they don't. So one way to think about it is just every time you have images, just to mark them as decorative until you can think about what is it you want it to say as your alternative text. So let me go into these images in our example. When you download our logo for Delta College, it comes with alternative text. And the alternative text is the name of the file, which is this SJDC underscore logo underscore color underscore blah, 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 dot JPG. And that is exactly what the student will hear when they click on this link. So that's not very helpful. What we want to do is if you want to use the logo in your page to click it and then click image options, and then it shows here alternative text and has all that whole stuff in there. So you can just say, if it's a logo, you just say the name, which is San Joaquin Delta College, and then just say logo. I don't need to describe that it's yellow and black or that it has that triangle shape with the paddle boat and all that stuff. Just say that it's a logo and say what the words are. I think that's what's really important is if there are words on that image, put those words inside the alternative text. Or if this is not that important, if this is just supposed to be going kind of go over the theming of your page, just mark it as decorative. Okay. Let me click done on that. Same with this image. It says, I downloaded this from uh, one of those free sites with all the images there. And it also came with alternative text that says handicap symbol, which is technically true, but it's not very helpful. It's not really describing what that is. That is a parking space. So I would say, disability disability parking space or something like that. Okay, disabilities parking space. And this one had a really good alternative text. It says bunch of sunflowers, and that's great. But this particular picture, let's say in this example, it's not really necessary. This is not a horticulture class. This is not a class about flowers. It's just supposed to be a pretty thing that's there. So we can mark it as decorative, and it grays out the alt text box and allows us to just click done. And then what happens is the screen reader just skips over it. It doesn't even say it's an image. It just says nothing. It just would read used just as decoration and then say solution because of this image, blah, 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 blah. It just keep on going. And that's why I was saying it'd be nice if all images were just marked as decorative because usually some of my students I've worked with, they don't really care. They just catalog the images as, okay, this is some nice thing that sighted students or sighted people like to look at, but it's not really important to them. So they just kind of like, okay, they just acknowledge it. They don't want, what's worse is that you don't want to have no alternative text. You don't want it to just say graphic and then nothing, because then they have to ask their sighted friends or sighted people that they know, what is this? What is this graphic of? Do I need to know this? Is this on the test? So it's better to at least mark it as decorative or put very, very short, like just a short phrase of the alternative text of what that image is. Let's see here. What's the most important thing from here? Use simple sentences. It does not have to be very in-depth, but if it requires a lot of in-depth description with this image, put that in the surrounding text. That's much, much more helpful for students. And the reason is they can go back and forth through the text and listen to it again or listen to one part of it again. if you have a bunch of information inside the alternative text, they have to listen to all of that at once. They can't go backwards or forwards. And if they miss something or want to listen to it again, they have to listen to the whole thing over again. So it's much better if you have a really descriptive or detailed description of an image, just put it in next to the image. It'd be much easier. And then just put a very, very, very simple description of the image next for the alternative text. For instance, like the Krebs cycle. That's the interaction of chemicals in the cell wall, right? And it's not even that simple. So that you have this long description of what the Krebs cycle is, and then that's next to the image, and then the alternative text would just be the Krebs cycle or something like that, or a close-up of a cell, something that might be helpful for them. But really, the meat of what you're trying to talk about is in the surrounding text. All right, so that's I in our list. So we're on LI, and then S is for structure. And please stop me if you have any questions. All righty. I'm going to go to, let's see here. Structure is about two different things, actually. We're going back in a way, we're going backwards inside the OEI rubric because we're going to D1 and D2. And these two items talk about headings and lists that you put inside your pages. Headings and lists give structure or give sort of a network, I suppose, or landmarks, maybe that's another way of saying it, landmarks where students with disabilities can jump from one part to another in your document. Visually, it helps break up the text so that it's a little bit easier to see and take in the information. It's a way of, I guess they say, chunking the text so that these blocks of information are a little bit easier for people to follow because they're all themed in a certain area or a certain section. What we don't want to do when we're adding structure or adding headings and specifically is to just make the text bold, make the text bigger, make the text a different color. Those are all really helpful visual items, but they're not telling Canvas that this is actually a heading, that this is formatted in a very special way. So what I've selected here is the heading for this section. It just says headings and lists. And that's what's read out loud from the screen reader perspective. But what they won't know it's a heading. Visually, we can kind of sort of think that might be a heading because it's this word that's all by itself above this chunk of text. But that's where it ends. It's not really told by the computer that this is a heading. So there are a bunch of headings and lists in this page that I'm going to fix by clicking the edit button. All right, I'm going to make this as big as possible so you can see it. Okay, so there are bullets at the top here, and those are fine. So we want to make this heading an actual heading. So I click anywhere on this. I don't need to select it. I can just click anywhere where it says that heading and click paragraph up in the rich text editor. I want to change that from a paragraph, just a plain old word, to heading 2. Okay. I want to make this word lists a heading as well. So I'm going to click down here and then click paragraph and click heading 2. I could technically make all the headings on my page heading 2, right? If you do want to have a subheading, and I can't remember, add structure to this, text or to this. I think I made all the headings on this a heading 2. Yeah. But if you did want to make this a subheading of lists, for instance, I could just click paragraph and click heading 3. But I don't want to make the first one heading 3. You don't want to use the headings out of order because it's a little confusing. The student using a screen reader will hear headings, heading 3, and they'll wonder what happened to heading 2? What happened to the previous headings? Did I miss something? And usually the reason people use a different heading level is because they don't like the way the other heading looks. So I would say just make sure that you're using them in the correct order, and then come back later if you want to change the way it looks. You can always change this to look like bigger text or different color, but do that after you've formatted the text as a heading. So I'm going to put this, actually, I think it's supposed to be heading 2, so I'm going to make that heading 2. So add structure to this text to make it accessible. Also keep this in mind, that's supposed to be a heading 2. You can kind of see I used italics before, so it looks like it stands out a little bit more, but this is still a heading 2. These are still all heading 2s. All right. Lists are also a way of structuring your text, and they're very, very helpful. What you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to put an asterisk or a little arrow or a little smiley face for the bullets. You want to actually use the bulleting tool inside Canvas. So these are all supposed to be bulleted, these items here. And there's a quick trick for selecting things. You do have to select these. The headings you don't have to select. You just have to click it, but the lists you do. So I want to make these 3 items, these 3 issues into a list. And there's one quick way of selecting this all. I can select the first word, then press and hold the Shift key, and then click at the end of where I want the selecting to end. Oops, I have to admit a few more people. Here they go. All right, so I selected the first word, and then I move the cursor down to the end where I want to select, and I press and hold Shift, and then I click with the mouse, and it selects all those items all at once. This is very handy when you want to select maybe like a whole page, or maybe something goes from one page to the other. You don't want to do that thing where you kind of click and hold and drag, and then it goes too far or too fast or something like that. You just select the first item, press and hold Shift, and then click after the last item. So I want to make these a list. So I selected them and I go up to, I think I numbered them. So I'm going to click the ordered list button. And then instead of bullets, I'm going to click on numbered. Yeah, very good. Oh, and this one accidentally became a numbered list. I just click it and click it off. All right. I think these last 3 paragraphs are also supposed to be bullets. So I'm going to select these in the same manner and then click bullets. So that beeping is driving me crazy. I'm going to save this and kind of give an example or take a listen about what this sounds
Speech
like
mode
now.
beeps, speech mode talk.
So I turned on NVDA and I'm going to press the H key.
Structure heading level 1.
So heading level 1s are always reserved for the title of that page. So I now know because it said heading level 1, I'm at the very top. So I'm going to move down 1.
List with 4 items bullet in the OEI rubric. Headings are discussed in section D1 and lists are discussed in section D2.
Great. So it told me there was a list of 4 items and it read the first list item. I'm going to press H again.
Headings heading level 2.
So now it says heading level 2 for headings. And I'm going to press it H again.
Lists heading level 2.
Very good.
Add structure to this text to make it accessible heading level 2.
All right. So it's working. So I can go up or down through the document, but just by pressing the H key to go from heading to heading to heading. I couldn't do that before. Before it would just say there are no headings. I'm going to move down 1.
List with 3 items 1. Issue, the words headings, lists, and add structure.
Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it told me it was a list of 3 items and then said the first item. I'm going to press H again.
No next heading.
Oh, there's no more next headings. Oh, I must, I forgot to make that a heading. Sorry. So now you can see what happens. If you don't mark it as a heading, it'll just not know. So let me know if you have any questions
Speech
about
mode off.
adding structure to your document. So that's actually combining 2 different items from the OEI rubric into one. So it's my little trick. That structure actually stands for 2 things. It stands for headings and lists that you add to your pages. So the last, well, at least the T in list is tables. And a lot of people don't use tables. So we may kind of go through this as quickly as we can. the main thing to understand about tables is to not use tables if you don't want to, if you're not using it as a table. And let me try to explain that. So if you're using it for organizing data, that's exactly what a table is for. But if you're using it because you want the text to look in a pretty way, like you want pictures and text to be right next to each other, don't use a table for that. Or if you do use a table, talk to me about it. There's a way of I don't know if you call it tricking, but you can kind of you're kind of telling the computer, okay, this is not actually a real table. This is kind of a fake table, and I'm just using it for layout purposes. Although there are other ways to do that same effect of having pictures and text right next to each other that doesn't involve using tables. If you want to use a table, though, use it as a table. Um, and what that means is you're going to add in different formatting or headers to this table. So yeah, we had talked about adding headers to a page. Now we're going to add headers to an actual table. And this is a way of telling the computer how this data is being organized. So let me go forward and talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So these are some standard, just basic tables. And this first one, it says the table does not have table headers or a caption. A little caption means it's like adding alt text to a table, and it gives some information to the student about what this table is for, or what it's going to be used for. Um, Actually, I just realized there were a lot of new people who just came in. I'm going to copy and paste that text link to the handout in the chat again, just in case if you wanted to download that and follow along that way. All right, so I want to make these tables accessible. Let me actually, maybe
Speech mode beeps.
before I
Speech
do
mode
that,
talk.
I've never done this before. I keep
From Ed Dole
forgetting.
to every.
I always keep forgetting. Let me go to this first table. Oops.
Make these tables. Table with 4 rows and 3 columns. Row 1 column 1 colors.
Okay, so the focus right now is on this word colors inside this table. I'm going to move down a row.
Row 2 red.
So it says row 2 red. And then I'm going to move right one.
Column 2 strawberry.
So it says column 2 strawberry. So what is that? I don't know. It's just a column. It's a second column, and it's the word strawberry in that row or column.
Column 3 cat.
And I moved over one more, and it tells me there's a column 3 cat. So it would be much more helpful
Row 3 dog.
instead of saying row 3 or row
Row 4
4,
parrot.
that it actually gave me a little bit more information about what these items are organized as. Same with the table below. If I go to that table,
Table with 6 rows and 2 columns. Row 1 column 1 percentage
so
points.
right now it's on this first cell here where it says percentage points. I'm going to move down a row.
Row 2 90% to 100%. Column 2A.
I just moved over to column 2 and it just says column 2A. This is a grading chart. It would be nice if it had a little bit more information for the student to
Edit link.
understand. I'm going to turn off
Make speech mode off.
the voice right now. I'm going into edit mode. And then it's already telling me, the accessibility checker is telling me that there is a problem. There are 4 issues on this page. I'm going to run actually the Pope Tech because I think Pope Tech catches some of the issues a little bit more clearly. So I scroll down to the bottom of the page and I'm clicking this P, which stands for Pope Tech Accessibility Checker. And it's telling me that there are 3 issues. One, that there's no heading structure. And that's fine for this page actually, because there is a heading. We said the title of the page is a heading 1, but there's no more headings below that. And that's fine for short pages like this. I don't think you need any more headings. So we'll skip that issue. But I do want to go to tables and lists. And it says this table, this first one here, let me make it a little bit bigger. This first one has an issue and it selected it for me when I clicked it. And it's saying, do you want to put in a table header? That makes the first row a header, excuse me. And that would be helpful because I want colors and foods and pets to be sort of the subjects of each of those columns. So I'm going to set that. And what did I say this is? What's a short description of this? Oh, I just said types of colors, foods, and pets. It's kind of basic. That's my description. So I just want to show you what it looks like when I apply that. It added that text that I typed in as the alternative text. Instead of hiding it like it usually does for images, it puts it at the top of the table. So sometimes I use that as my header in a way. Um, if I'm talking about a table, I might put just a couple words, and that might be my header for that table. In this case, I'm not doing that. I'm just giving a very short description. It also bolded and centered that header row. So now when I go into it using the assistive technology, it'll tell me instead of column 2, it'll say foods. Instead of column 3, it'll say pets. So the student will know which column that they're in. This next table has a very similar idea, but that not only does it have a header row, it also has a header column. Because what I want is when students move down from A to B to C, I want them to hear the percentage being read out loud. And that'll be very helpful. What did I call this? It's a grading scale. So let me apply that, and then I'm going to close the accessibility checker and then save it, and then turn on the voice again.
Speech mode beeps. Speech mode talk.
All right, I'm going to go to that first table again.
Type of colors, foods, and pets table with 4 rows and 3 columns. Type of colors, foods, and pets.
Okay. So when I went to the table, it told me that alternative text, that little caption. I'll move
Row
down.
1 column 1 colors.
Let me move down again.
Row 2 red.
So row 2 red. I'm going to move right to the foods again.
Foods column 2 strawberry.
So it said what column I'm in, and then it said what the cell is, what's in the cell. I'm going to do that again.
Pets column 3 cat.
So it said pets column, not row or column 3. It said pets column and then cat. Okay, much more
Grading
helpful.
scale table with 6 rows and 2 columns. Grading scale caption.
So this time I'm going to move down to that A. So let me do that.
Not in a table cell.
Oops.
Row 1 column 1. Row 2 90%. Grade column 2A.
So I'm in the grade column and A. I'm going to move down one.
80 to 89%. Row 3B.
So this time it read off the row name, which is 80 to 89%, and then said B.
70 to 79%. Row 4C.
And I'm going to do it again.
60 to 69%. Row 5D. 0 to 59%. Row 6F.
Okay. So it's much more helpful for students when they're moving down through a column, so that this way they don't have to keep moving to the left to read off what was inside, what this name of this row is. They can just hear all of it all at once just by moving down through the table. I hope that makes sense.
Module
Oops.
navigation. Next module. Speech mode off.
Thank you. Oh, and this is just a page just to describe if you do want to have images and text next to each other, instead of using a table to do that, you can use or adjust the HTML to do that. And I can show you how to do that. Just let me know. I believe that the HTML text is called float, or that's what the command is called. And you're just floating literally a picture next to some text. And this is accessible. This will read correctly. So let me know if you ever wanted to do that. All right, so now we're in the CCC of our list. This is great because we just have about 15 more minutes for our presentation. So when you add color to your pages, you just want to make sure that the color has enough contrast between the foreground and the background so that the text doesn't blend into the background. You want to make sure that someone who has maybe low vision or is colorblind can see the text much more clearly. You also don't want to represent information only by color. You don't want to say, click the red word or the click the word that's in black. Or, well, black was not too bad. Black is not too bad unless it's on a blue background or something like that, and it's not easy to see. But you don't want to just represent something just by color, because somebody may miss that because they can't see the color. So what does that mean? You want to make sure you back up that information or duplicate it in a way by also using words. I hope that makes sense. So let me edit this. So the first one is that first issue with the color. The word color is this really light pink, and we want to fix that so there's more contrast. In fact, the accessibility checker will tell us that there's something going on here. When I click on it, it highlights it and says, increase the contrast between the text and the background, because this light pink is not gonna cut it. So what I usually recommend is a lot of instructors like using red because we want it to stand out. Instead of using the default red, use instead the dark red. So I selected the word color and I'm going to click on this uh, font color box thingy. So instead of using this red, actually the color, by the way, is light red. That's way wrong. But so is red. It's frustrating. It doesn't quite have the right enough lumens or contrast between the background and the foreground. So instead of using light red or red, use dark red. You can even make it bold so it really stands out. And that will address that issue. This sentence, it says, if you want to use an accessible color to emphasize text, use this color in bold. So what is this color? Well, I already said it was dark red. So why don't we just say it's dark red? Instead of saying this color, say dark red. Be descriptive. Okay? So we're backing up the actual color with the words of what it is. All right. And it looks like those accessibility issues went away. Good. All right. I think I addressed some of this already. Um, By the way, another issue that comes up, or another way of fixing, I suppose, the color issue is to make the text larger. So instead of just making it a different color, we can make it bigger, and sometimes that helps with that contrast because there's more of it, more of the text that we can see. But I feel like it's just easier just to make it dark red. Just make the color darker, and that's an easier fix than making the text bigger. All right, so we're in our list CCC, and this is the second C. This is checkers. And we already talked about the accessibility checkers that are available. There's the accessibility checker in Canvas, and the Pope Tech accessibility checker. Although the other thing I sometimes talk about is really the best accessibility checker is our brains. Our brains, our best way of catching things much more quickly and fixing them right away. And I realize that's a really hard thing to say because a lot of this might be new for you and you're not familiar with how to find accessibility problems, but this is a great way to start, right? This list. And once you start getting used to or seeing some of these issues and knowing how to fix them and knowing why you're fixing them, it'd be much quicker way of fixing them instead of using the accessibility checkers. The accessibility checkers are great, though. They're very helpful for learning what the issues are, and they're also helpful for very specific things, like we just fixed the tables, right? That's much easier to use the accessibility checker to do. There is a manual way to add those table headers in there, but I think using accessibility checker is much easier. You can apply the same list, CCC, to your other documents that you have students use in your course. And what you may have is you may embed them into your course or you may link them into your course. One way, though, to make your documents accessible and not to worry about, whether this PDF or this Word is accessible or not, is just to import it into a page. So just instead of having a separate document or a link to that document in your page, just copy and paste the whole document into your page, if you can do that. And then add in the different things we mentioned in the list. Make sure that there's headings, make sure that the links are readable, make sure the images have alt text or they're marked as descriptive. do all of those things inside Canvas, and that helps in a lot of different ways. It makes sure the document is accessible, but also helps students so that they're not going somewhere else for your information, or they don't have to download something, which already kind of throws some people off who aren't familiar with downloading. Everything is just right there inside your course. It kind of all flows together. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're wondering about the accessibility of a certain document, you may want to just copy and paste it into a page and see how it looks there, and see if that might be a way of addressing that issue. All right, and we're at the last C in our list, CCC, which is captions. If you use videos inside your course, whether they're videos that you create or they're videos that you found on YouTube and you want your students to use them for learning, they all have to be captioned. And what I mean by captions is those words that appear on the bottom of the screen, or in this case, sometimes the top of the screen, and it's reading off what the person is saying, or it's writing out in text format what the person is saying. And also sometimes it will write out sounds that are happening in the background or things that are happening off screen, and it writes that out for the person viewing the video. So, what comes up a lot is people wonder if their videos are captioned or not. And one way to determine that is to look at their captions. And if this is in YouTube, look at your captions and see what they're called. If they're called auto-generated captions, those aren't captions, unfortunately. If they are captions that are auto-generated or created by YouTube, those are a great starting point for captions, but they're not finished captions. And finished captions have punctuation. They are accurate to what the person actually says. It'll have indicators about who is speaking, especially if there's two people or more than one person. It will put that person's name so that you know it's switching from one person to another. All of those things are not added automatically with YouTube. Sometimes they're added with some other tools. Sometimes I've seen in Zoom, it will indicate the speaker has changed, but sometimes that's accurate and sometimes it's not. So you'll really have to look at your YouTube or Zoom captions to make sure that they are accurate. And that can be a very tedious procedure. Uh, I always say that if you created a 5-minute video, then it's going to be at least 10 minutes, if not more than that, to edit it. But how many people make 5-minute videos? We make 30-minute videos or 45-minute videos. So just anticipate, a lot of time to go through those captions to edit them. So what was another way of fixing these these captions? One way to fix them is to contact me. We have still some funding from Equity, and we have an account with a third-party video captioning vendor, and it, just let me know. Let me know if you have videos that need to be captioned. These could be your own videos, or they can be videos in YouTube. And I send the links to this video captioner, and they come back within a day or two, and they caption all the videos. It's really that quick. You just need to let me know what videos that you need to have captioned. And I feel like that's really the easiest way of doing it. There's just no other way, unless you're really ambitious, you really want to give it a try. There are websites that allow you to caption your own videos, or caption other people's videos. So if you made your video in Zoom, you could go through the captions in Zoom. Usually you just click the video and you can see the captions appear on the side, and you can just edit those there. If you have a YouTube video, you can use either Amara or this other one called Subtitle Editor by Happy Scribe. And what you do is you put in the link to that YouTube video, and then you have this window opens up below it, and you can see the video happening or playing at the top, and you can just add in your own captions below that. I find this extremely tedious, but that is an option for you to do. Like I said, I don't recommend this. I'm just saying it is an option. Another option is just to find other videos that are captioned. If you do a search in video in YouTube for a video, first do the search, and then you can filter all those search results by clicking filters, and then click subtitles CC, and it'll only show you the videos that have captions in them. But again, I think the easiest way to caption videos is just to let me know, and we can get those captioned for you. All right. Can't remember if I have anything. Oh yeah, it was. Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to update some of this. So when you when you want to request captioning from me, what the easiest first step is to make sure the videos are in YouTube. So if they're third party, obviously they're already in YouTube. But if you have your own videos that you've created in Zoom, I would download them onto your computer and then upload them into a YouTube site. And that's much, much easier for this video captioner vendor to access those videos and caption them. And then not only can they caption the videos, but they can put the caption right into the video. So there's nothing you need to do at all. Once they caption it, they put the captions in there, it's done. So it makes it much, much easier to do. Um, one of these days, I'm going to make my own like captioning course and kind of go over how do you make a video that's captioned and make it the easiest way as possible. Right now, I've been experimenting with my own class. I teach a class called Learning Skills 90A and B. We teach keyboarding and how to access a computer. And I have a 5 minute video or 5 to 10 minute video that just kind of explains all the assignments. And what I do now is I read from a script. I just read the script, blah, 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 record that, and then I do the video again, listening to my voiceover, and then I'm just doing the things on the screen about what I want the students to see and find and do. And that has worked out so much better for me with the captions because I can literally just copy and paste my script into the video, and there, voila, are my finished captions. Even if the auto captions were on and they're okay, I don't need to even look at them. I can just copy and paste my script into the video, and it's done. So if you want to ever go over that or do that, let me know. We can do that together. I
Another
think,
question.
yes.
Um, if I have a YouTube videos in the future
Mhm.
and they're schlepped out to the service that does that,
Uh-huh.
where then is it stored for me to use it in my Canvas shells?
That's a good question. So the video, all the video link, excuse me, I'm getting my words confused. Three Play Three Play Media is the name of the vendor, and all Three Play Media needs is the link to that video. So that's what I was suggesting. If you put the video inside YouTube, like your own YouTube channel, then you just give me that link, and I send that link to get to the vendor, and they process your video. And the video stays where it is. It stays inside YouTube. So whatever link that you have for YouTube that you gave to me, you could also just put that in your course. And that's how students would find that video. And like I said, if when the vendor captions it, they just put those captions right into that video. So the video always stays with you, and the captions will be just copied and pasted basically into your course. It's really, really nice. So
So where is the link? Where does the link go to that's in the Canvas page, say?
it will go to your YouTube site. So you would need to have your own YouTube
Oh, I
channel.
see.
Yeah.
I see.
Do you
Gotcha.
have
Okay.
do you have a like a Gmail account?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you already have a YouTube account. So you could just put your videos into your own YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so you already have that now. And you don't have to make it public. So the videos have different settings. You can make them public, you can make them private, and you can make them unlisted. And what I usually recommend people do is just to make them unlisted. Don't make them private because then the vendor can't find them. And don't make them public because then everyone can see your videos. So just make them unlisted. After you upload it, you make it unlisted. and then you share that link with me or copy and paste that link to me, and then I send that to the vendor to caption.
And then what happens after that? Then once it's done, comes back to you. Then how do I access it to
Mhm.
make sure that it's on my page and working
Mhm.
now newly captioned?
You would just, I would notify people. I would
Uh-huh.
notify you to let you know that the vendor is done with the captioning, and then you can just click that same link and go to the video, and you'll see those captions there, and that's how you'll
Oh,
know
gotcha.
it's
And
finished.
then
Hmm.
then I just embed it into my page then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
embedding.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
As I
Embed
would usual. Yeah. Got
exactly. Right.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the difference is that the captioning one is coming from a different place, from a vendor, not from YouTube. Yeah, I got it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, right. In
Cool.
fact, what I notice is that you'll see two videos, there's two captions, and when you click your video or when students click the video and they click the CC button, they'll see two sets of captions. They'll see one says auto-generated, and they'll see the one called, I think it's just called English. They click on that one, and that's the one that they'll see
Uh-huh.
the captions for. Um, that one's the most seamless to me. It's just by doing it that way. There are more complicated ways if you want that.
No, no,
Each
no.
there is a place where the captions are located, the captions themselves. They are in the 3Play Media website, and you'll have an account to go there, and you can always download the captions if you want and put them somewhere else if you wanted to. But I find this method to be easiest. You just give me the link to YouTube, and then they just take care of it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
your time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And let me know if we can go over that together
Okay.
anytime. That's what happens is a professor will contact me that they have some videos that need captioning, and we'll just talk about what that is, and I'll set up the account, and it's very easy.
Great. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're at the end of our presentation. Is there any other questions or anything that people have to? Oh, we're actually out of time,
I
so
would,
if you have to go, go ahead. But
I would like to
yeah,
add
Tara.
another thing. I'm deaf myself. So when you use YouTube, be careful with the caption. That's what I want you to want. I discuss all the professor to watch it, turn off the sound and read the caption. Because the caption can be off to the point. That's what I recommend for a combination for deaf or hard of hearing. That's
Hmm.
all. Thank you.
No, no, Tara, that's
Bye.
excellent. Thank you very much for saying that. Yeah, that is really why we're doing this, because sometimes what's being said and what's on the captions completely different. So that's this vendor, 3Play Media, is very good. They make their captions very accurate. So if you're noticing your captions are not working, contact me and we can make captions for your videos. Yeah. Thank you, Tara. Any other comments or questions? Yes, you did, Nancy. So Nancy made a comment. I did this last semester with my Spanish course, and they were great. Yes. So that's a thank you for chiming in, actually, Nancy. That you were a great example. Uh, her captions or her videos are all in YouTube, and we were able to caption them not only in English but also in Spanish. And so that's an option for you as well. They will they can make Spanish captions as well.
Yeah, they were great, and they would get back to me really fast. So
Yeah.
so my students enjoy that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and something that you were doing that's you were capturing the videos during your class. Like that can be very challenging. So if
Yeah.
someone yeah, you do want to get the videos back very quickly.
Yes,
So
definitely.
if you're doing it like Nancy, go ahead and then contact me, or if you're planning for the future, also contact me. It's never too early or too late to work on this. Usually what I recommend people do is, if this seems so overwhelming, is just to first just list out all of your videos, just all the videos that you recommend students use. In fact, when I do a course review for somebody, I will do that. Oh, this is a video, and I'll put it into a spreadsheet just to list them all out, just so we can figure out which ones that need to be captioned. Sometimes the captions are fine the way they are, so we don't need to do anything, but we would still want to just list them all out first. So if that's all you do this semester is just list out all your videos, that's great. And then maybe next semester you can work on, something else. Just take one little bit at a time. Or sometimes what people do is they'll take the list, right? And they'll go through their class and then figure out what links need to be renamed or what images need to have alt text. And I'll do that this semester and just do one little bit at a time so you don't feel like you're overwhelming yourself with all these different tasks. All righty, everyone. I'm going to hang out here. So if you have any questions or anything you think about, just let me know. Otherwise, have a good day.
Bye. Thank you, John.
Bye. Thanks so much, Nancy. Appreciated that.
Yes.
Hi, Wes.
I just was raising, I was going to actually, I think if a picture is decorative, you should just not have it. And I mean, actually, I was looking at some of my classes, which I think I've made some reasonable attempts at some of these things, and some of them I probably haven't. But like I use a book from Stanford. It's a history book that's available online, and I edited it out. I took the chapters and I edited out everything, like the page numbers and the punctuation things. So when it reads it back with the reader, it just reads the book to you. And then I took all the pictures out. Now, then I went back and thought, I'll put the pictures back in. So I started making two versions. So some of my classes, you have version A and version B. And the version B, I describe all the images. And I wrote my own descriptions. It was also kind of funny because there were many errors in the images, by the way, which I haven't told Stanford about. Their horrendous, like, for example, identifying English soldiers that were actually German soldiers.
Oh,
but
not even accurate.
the point is, and the deal was, is that and again, I'm not an expert on disabilities or anything, but to me, if you say descriptive image, then I think that you should, like, for example, the sunflowers, the person with the disability should be told what the other people think is decorative and useful for being decorative, because it's information on other people. I don't like any of that stuff. Bluebirds, pictures of bluebirds to make it welcoming. I don't like any of that stuff. It's learning only, and it should either be useful or not. So if it's there, it should be described. But then like I said, I had the dilemma of, you don't really need these pictures. So I just made two versions, because I had nothing better to do in life. Now I haven't finished it because I realized that becomes comical amounts of work.
It is.
But that, and also, like with the tables on the syllabus, I just have it read 90%. I just have it read what everything is, so that it makes sense if you listen to it. Because tables are also evil, along with colors and font shape and all that stuff. It's like all the stuff we throw in there to make it jazzy and is a mistake. So it should just be informational. It should only be in there if it's useful. If there's an image, it should be described, or it should be eliminated, or, like I said, make choices. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, because a lot of like trying to adapt tables, just you explaining it, I imagine myself listening to it, and it's just too confusing. You got to visualize, a person who can't see visualizing horizontal, vertical, and cross references when you don't need to do it that way.
Yeah.
Or you could just say, red duck is a pet or something like that, as opposed to, what duck, red, pet, and column. And so I don't know. I also, the other thing is, I do have a class. I might want to talk to you about captioning, because I've got videos. Some of them are pirated, because what happens is that I have a movie I want students to see, and it gets stuck onto YouTube, and then there's 5 versions of it, and then they all get pulled down because of a copyright complaint. And then I get my own copy and I put it back under a false name. So the movie's there, but it says something like, spaghetti recipes. Oh, nobody. And then we also have my son did this, where you have to, it's not publicly available. You put a video on YouTube. So you take it off of YouTube and you put it back, but you don't let them know it's there. But now those can be captioned. Now, they all have captions. How good they are, I don't know. Whatever, I'm just thinking out loud. But that's the trouble with YouTube, is that you can't rely that something that's on YouTube will stay. So you've got to sometimes just, kidnap it. So
Yes,
like,
that is an unfortunate thing.
well,
We've
I use these obsolete public television documentaries, and I say obsolete, they're just old.
Mhm,
And they're no longer available online from public television. And I think their own copyrights have run out or something because
mhm,
they've
mhm,
devolved back to the original producer.
mm,
So yeah, and I really want to. One is one's on Ishi, this native fellow they found in California 100+ years ago,
ah,
and it was, I think, the very first It was one of the first documentaries on PBS on the I can't think of the name of the series, but it was at the first episode, and it's
mhm,
really good. But it's no longer available
mm,
unless you just pirate it.
mhm.
So anyway, I mean, quasi pirate. Nobody really cares, but it's a problem with doing the captioning because they disappear on you. And if you pick the wrong
Right,
version, then you start from scratch again. So anyway,
right. Well, yeah, copyright can be a very touchy kind of thing. I usually for me, I just want to make sure that the students can use it, right?
oh
So
yeah, no,
I
I understand. I'm just
when
saying
it
it.
when it's when it's for disability purposes, it's usually okay for us to quote unquote copy something, but whether the material itself should be copied or not is really hard. But especially if something is out of date, it's a little frustrating, like there's
It's
no
very
other
frustrating.
issue, there's no other copy of this anywhere. So,
Yeah, well, the
why?
only ones I've done this with are public. Some old, I think they're all public television documentaries, and they
Yeah,
simply get old.
yeah,
And and public television, for whatever reason, they have their website and they make
mm,
stuff available for X years, and then it kind
hmm
of goes into the black hole.
yeah,
So, and why they even care,
right,
because it isn't like somebody stealing the Mickey Mouse thing with the copyright. Ishi, the last Ishi, the last Yahi is not going to be stolen and money's made from it. There's
right.
no money there. And I bought a copy
Oh,
and I can show it in my classroom. So I own a disc, but it's like, because it's this disc, those things they used to use.
right, right, right.
So I bought one, and again, I don't think PBS even owns it anymore.
Mm.
So, but it's great. It's really a great little documentary for my
Mm.
purposes. So anyway, I'll have you look at those,
Yeah.
the ones that I have on I don't have the California class I do. I have like, I think 4 documentaries that they watch hour long,
Oh,
but they're great. And they're old stuff and they haven't until they redo them. I don't know what to do about it.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's it though. I have no other comment. I was sort of, when I was thinking about this, it was kind of doing universal because
Mhm,
the thing about the video, I really like the screen reader. I like the way it reads. I
mhm,
like to listen to books
mhm,
online and have them read to me by that
mhm.
thing because I like the little, I don't know, I like the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
But people can also do that with phones, or anybody can. So the point
Mhm,
is, I like to think about this in terms of just making it. I don't like the idea of making it look pretty to be pretty. It should be it should only be there because there's a reason for it. And if you can make it beneficial to anybody,
mhm,
that is to say, it's nice a person, it's nice to listen as
mhm,
well as it is to visualize, and particularly when you can listen to it, our students riding on the bus or God knows using their
mhm,
phone, like it's a lot more important, I think, to focus on making stuff work through phones.
mhm.
Even though I don't have a cell phone and I hate them, they're the work of the devil. But everybody has them and they rely upon them. So you need to have your class work on, because how many students I have when they're on an online class or
Right,
otherwise, and they can't find something because they're looking at a phone screen
right,
and not a computer screen,
right.
which
And it
they
takes like
shouldn't, they
three
should,
different emails, and when you realize, oh wait, why are you using your phone? This whole time you've been using your phone. No wonder you
yeah.
couldn't find it.
So again, that isn't necessarily an excuse, but like for listening to something, the phone talks to you just fine.
Right.
So I don't know. Whatever.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that outlook too. Yeah, as things get more complicated and more fancier, it lost a lot of the accessibility in the past. It used to be very basic, right? Literally basic. That was the language they were using, and it was a lot more accessible in a sense. And now that we have things much more fancier, it becomes harder. But I also like your point about universal design, like if I'm in the car, if I want a text read to me, it can be read out loud. And
Right.
that's just using the same technology that blind people use to read their texts. So yeah,
Well,
it
an
doesn't
awful
have to
lot.
be a special thing.
And as I'm always the cranky old man in the room now, it's my job, is that,
To remind people.
media now is like, show me any movie that's being like any of the superhero movies, and there's three pieces of action going on constantly, and they're constantly zooming, panning, and pulling back, distracting. They're very distracting. And the trouble is that the way you make things visually interesting is not necessarily communicating effectively.
Right.
And so I think that's the nature, is that we have to have, colors and flashes and all this kind of stuff is not helping with teaching really.
No.
Because I mean, and again, I am the old fogey in the room, but that's my perspective on it. So whatever we present, particularly online and through videos, needs to be clear. Yeah, whatever.
No, I totally
So
agree. Totally
that's
agree.
it.
Thank
I've
you.
got more comments, but I would like you to look at those videos, and we can check and see if those old documentaries have adequate captioning.
Mhm.
Um,
I could do that.
yeah,
So you could
and
just send me the links to the videos, or if you, yeah, that would
yeah,
be
I'll
the
get to
best
that.
way
So.
if you can do
Because
that.
it's, and again, I could have my son work on it, but I think hiding the videos from the YouTube people, well, it is amazing though, because there's stuff that'll sit out there for years, and then somebody suddenly notices that somebody somewhere owns it. But this stuff is usually obscure.
Yeah.
It's not like no one ever comes around looking for, you're violating my copyright and you owe me money, because the stuff is not, making somebody watch a documentary about a native person who wandered out of the brush 100 years ago is not popular, unfortunately. All right. That's it. Those are my comments, but I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Are you sure you want to stop?